Welcome to this deep dive into Norse mythology.
Right.
We're going beyond the surface level today.
Yeah.
You're not just here for the Thor and Loki's greatest hits, are you?
No.
You want to understand the myths, the
Yeah.
figures, the cosmology, and how
it's-
these stories reflect the human experience.
Right.
And thankfully, we've got Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology as our guide.
Yeah.
He does a fantastic job of making these ancient tales accessible without losing any of their original power.
He does a really good job. And what's so fascinating is how different the Norse creation myth is compared to others.
Oh, yeah.
Many cultures start with a single, all-powerful creator.
Uh-huh.
But here, it's all about elemental forces.
Right.
Fire and ice.
Hmm.
These are embodied by Muspel, a realm of fire, and Niflheim, a realm of ice.
Okay.
Imagine these two forces eternally clashing, eternally interacting.
So no one God creating the universe.
Yeah.
It's born from this chaotic dance of fire and ice. That's pretty wild.
Exactly. And between these realms lies Ginnungagap, a vast void where these forces meet. And from that void, from that interplay, emerges Ymir, the first giant.
Okay.
Now get this, the first gods, Odin and his brothers, actually use Ymir's body to create the world as we know it.
Oh, and the world was created from a giant's body. That's a little bit brutal.
Yeah.
And a whole lot different from the dust-to-dust idea.
Right.
It sort of sets the tone, doesn't it? This isn't a peaceful, perfectly balanced universe.
It definitely sets the stage for the Norse worldview.
Yeah.
This cosmos is born out of conflict. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
Hmm.
And speaking of terrifying, imagine this. The world itself is a flat disk surrounded by the sea.
Okay.
Right in the middle is Midgard, where humans live, protected by a wall built from Ymir's eyelashes.
A wall made of eyelashes.
Eyelashes.
I mean, that's both creative and slightly creepy.
It is.
Talk about a strong first impression.
Right. It definitely gets you thinking about the scale of things,
Yeah.
the power of those primordial giants. But beyond the world itself, there's this incredible concept of Yggdrasil, the world tree.
Oh, yeah.
This massive tree connects all 9 realms. Asgard, home of the gods Midgard, where humans live, Jotunheim, land of the giants, and so on.
Okay, the world. I've always loved that image.
Yeah.
This giant tree holding all these different worlds together,
Uh-huh.
each with its own distinct character and dangers.
Yeah.
It just feels so epic.
It really does, and it emphasizes how everything in Norse mythology is interconnected.
Yeah.
No realm exists in isolation.
Okay.
They all influence each other. Their fates intertwine.
Right.
But we can't talk about these realms without talking about the ones who inhabit them, right?
Oh, of course, let's get to the gods.
Right.
There's so many fascinating characters in Norse mythology, but you have to start with the big 3, right? Odin, Thor, and Loki.
The big 3.
They practically define the Norse pantheon.
Absolutely. And Gaiman does a fantastic job of fleshing them out.
Yeah.
Showing us their personalities, their motivations, even their flaws.
Yeah.
Take Odin, the all-father leader of the Aesir, which is the main tribe of gods.
Okay.
He's driven by the pursuit of wisdom, but his ambition can lead him to extreme lengths.
You're talking about his sacrifice at Mimir's well.
I am.
To gain knowledge, Odin gives up one of his eyes to drink from the well of wisdom. I mean, talk about dedication.
Exactly. It shows the Norse value of knowledge.
Yeah.
But it also hints at the potential dangers of unchecked ambition.
Uh-huh.
And it sets a precedent for the Aesir gods. They're willing to pay a high price to achieve their goals.
Okay, so Odin's the serious knowledge-seeking type.
Yes.
But then you have Thor, the god of thunder.
Right.
Gaiman wasn't kidding when he described Thor as not the brightest of the gods, was he?
Well, let's just say Thor is known for his strength and his hammer, Mjolnir, rather than his intellect.
Right.
But he plays a crucial role as protector of Asgard.
Yeah.
And is incredibly popular among mortals.
Yeah. He's definitely the god you want on your side when the giants come knocking.
Yes.
And then there's Loki. You can't forget the trickster god. He's neither fully good nor evil.
Right.
He stirs things up, causes both chaos and progress. He's complicated.
That's the perfect word for Loki.
Yeah.
He embodies this ambiguity that runs through so much of Norse mythology.
Yeah.
This constant tension
Yeah.
between order and chaos, creation and destruction, and Loki is always right in the middle of it all.
Like when he steals Thor's hammer, right? That caused a whole lot of chaos.
Yes.
But then in classic Loki fashion, he helped get it back.
Exactly.
He plays both sides, which makes him unpredictable and endlessly entertaining.
Yes, and his actions often have unforeseen consequences.
Right.
Which brings us to a major theme in Norse mythology.
Okay.
It's not just about good versus evil.
Right.
It's about the consequences of choices, accepting fate,
Uh-huh.
and the struggle for survival, even for the gods.
That's what makes these myths so relatable even today.
Yeah.
They tap into these universal human anxieties. Like,
Right.
take the story of Baldur's death. It wasn't some epic battle or evil monster that killed him, but a seemingly insignificant event with devastating consequences.
It was?
His mother Frigg tried to protect Baldur by making everything in existence swear an oath not to harm him. Everything except mistletoe,
Right.
which seemed so small and insignificant that no one even thought about it.
Yes.
It's like that saying, it's the little things that get you. And mistletoe, of all things, it shows that even the gods can be powerless against fate.
Right.
And even the best laid plans can unravel in unexpected ways.
It's a story that speaks to our own anxieties about the things we can't control.
Yeah.
We can try to protect ourselves and the people we love.
Yeah.
But there's always that fear of the unforeseen, of something we overlook.
It's a reminder that we don't always get to choose our fate.
Right.
But you know what's interesting in Norse mythology?
What's that?
Even the end of the world isn't the end of the story.
You're talking about Ragnarok.
I am.
The doom of the gods. The destruction of the world.
Yeah.
Most cultures see the end of days as a finality. But the Norse embrace the cyclical nature of time.
Yeah, Ragnarok isn't just some victory of good over evil.
Right.
It's this cataclysmic event where even the gods meet their end.
It is.
It's about the power of fate and natural forces playing out on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And what's even more fascinating is that from the ashes of Ragnarok, a new world emerges. Two survivors, life, and life's yearning repopulate the earth.
Okay.
This isn't just destruction, it's renewal, a chance for everything to begin again.
So we've got this incredible world born from chaos,
Yes.
populated by gods who are powerful but flawed,
Right.
and facing an inevitable end. That's also a new beginning.
Exactly.
It's clear that Norse mythology is about so much more than just brawny gods and epic battles.
Exactly. It's about humanity's relationship with the natural world. Our hopes and fears, our struggles and triumphs, all playing out against a backdrop of fate and cosmic forces. It's a story that continues to resonate thousands of years later, reminding us that even when facing the end, there's always the possibility of renewal. And what better example of that than the story of how Thor lost and then spectacularly regained his hammer.
Right.
That's where we'll pick up when we continue our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Speaking of powerful objects, you know what else was highly valued in Norse culture? Poetry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the ability to weave words, to tell stories, to preserve history and wisdom that was considered a true gift. And the Norse had a fascinating story about how this gift came to be.
Okay.
It involves gods, giants, a little trickery, and spit.
Wait, spit.
Yeah.
You're telling me the origin of poetry in Norse mythology starts with spit. That's not exactly the most glamorous image.
Not glamorous, but definitely memorable.
Okay.
See, the story goes that after a long and bitter war, two tribes of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir, finally made peace to seal the deal.
Right.
They did something rather unusual. They each spat into a giant vat.
Okay, that's a peace treaty I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
But what does a vat of divine spit have to do with poetry?
Well, from this unusual mixture of being emerged,
Okay.
his name was Kvasir, and he was incredibly wise, able to answer any question and solve any riddle. He wandered the world, sharing his knowledge freely.
So he's like a walking, talking encyclopedia born from the combined wisdom of the gods?
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool concept.
Yeah.
But how does this wise being born of spit end up connected to poetry?
Unfortunately, Kvasir's wisdom made him a target. Two dwarves, Jalar and Galar, driven by their own ambitions, decided they wanted all that knowledge for themselves.
I have a feeling this isn't going to end well for Kvasir.
You're right. They tricked him, lured him to their fortress under false pretenses, and, well, they killed him.
That's awful. But did they at least get what they wanted? Did they somehow absorb Kvasir's wisdom?
Not exactly. What they did next is even more bizarre and a bit gruesome.
Okay.
They mixed Kvasir's blood with honey and brewed it in a cauldron. This created a mead, a kind of honey wine.
Right.
But this wasn't your average drink.
Okay.
Anyone who drank this mead would gain the gift of poetry, eloquence, and wisdom.
Wow, so that's the famous mead of poetry we hear about in the myths. It's a potent concoction born from both wisdom and tragedy.
It is, but the story doesn't end there.
Okay.
Through a series of events involving a giant named Suttung and his daughter Gunlod, the mead ended up hidden deep inside a mountain, fiercely guarded.
And I bet a certain god, always on a quest for knowledge, couldn't resist the lure of this mead, right? Enter Odin stage left.
You know, when Odin heard tales of this mead that could bestow the gift of poetry, he knew he had to have it.
Of course.
He was always driven to acquire knowledge, to push the boundaries of understanding.
Yeah.
So he devised a plan. He disguised himself as a farmhand named Bolverker.
Okay.
And tricked Suttung's brother into helping him drill a tunnel into the mountain where the mead was hidden.
Clever. So Odin gets inside the mountain, but how does he get past Gunlod, the guardian of the mead? I'm guessing brute force wasn't his first option?
Brute force? Never. Odin was known for his cunning.
Yeah.
For his ability to change his shape.
Right.
And use his wits to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
And in this case, he relied on charm. He seduced Gunlod.
Oh, wow.
Persuading her to give him just a taste of the precious mead.
That's classic Odin. But we both know he wasn't going to settle for just a sip.
Of course not. Odin being Odin drained all 3 containers of the mead, the vats called Sun and Bodn, and the kettle named Odrer. Then he transformed himself into an eagle and flew back to Asgard with his prize.
Always thinking a few steps ahead. So Odin returns to Asgard with this mead of poetry.
Yes.
But he wasn't the type to hoard knowledge, was he?
Exactly. Odin believed that knowledge should be shared, used to inspire and create.
Yeah.
So he gave some of the mead to the gods, ensuring they had access to its power, but he also, in various ways, bestowed portions of it upon gifted mortals, poets, and storytellers. This ensured that the gift of poetry would be passed down through generations, inspiring creativity and preserving the stories of their culture.
That's an incredible story. It explains how poetry came to be in Norse mythology, but it also says something about the Norse people themselves, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The lengths Odin went to in order to obtain the mead shows how highly poetry and storytelling were valued in their culture.
Right.
It wasn't just entertainment. It was a way to preserve history, share wisdom, and connect with the gods.
Yeah.
And the fact that the mead itself was born from both wisdom and tragedy speaks to the power of creativity, its ability to transform even the darkest events into something beautiful and enduring.
It's a reminder that even in a world that faces Ragnarok, where everything ultimately ends, there's still this drive to create, to find meaning and beauty, and to share those stories with others.
Speaking of stories, you know what else captures that spirit of adventure, that blend of humor and larger-than-life characters? The story of how Thor lost his hammer, Mjolnir.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. It is. It's got everything. Giants, trickery disguises even a forced wedding.
Yeah.
It's almost too good to be true.
Almost. It's one of the most popular myths for a reason.
Right.
And it all starts with Thor waking up one morning to discover that his most prized possession, his hammer, is missing.
You know, for someone so strong, Thor can be surprisingly careless.
He can.
So how does a god like Thor lose something as important as his hammer?
Well, imagine this. Thor wakes up one morning, reaches for his trusty hammer, Mjolnir, and it's vanished.
What?
This is no ordinary hammer.
Right.
Mjolnir is more than just a weapon. It's a symbol of his power, a force for order in the cosmos. It's kind of a big deal when it goes missing.
I bet Thor wasn't too happy about that.
No, he wasn't.
Who did he suspect? Did he immediately blame Loki? I mean, it seems like Loki's usually the culprit when things go wrong in Asgard.
Well, it wouldn't be a Norse myth without a little Loki mischief, would it?
Right.
And yes, Thor's first thought, as always, was that Loki was behind it. And to be fair, it was a pretty safe bet, considering Loki's track record. So Thor confronts Loki and demands answers.
And what does Loki say? Does he just come right out and confess?
Surprisingly, no. Loki claimed he had no idea what happened to the hammer.
Oh, really?
But, ever the helpful trickster,
yeah,
he agreed to help Thor find it.
Okay.
Of course, Loki had his own motives. To track down the hammer, he needed to borrow Freya's feathered cloak, the one that allowed her to fly.
Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, lending her precious cloak to Loki. I'm sensing a bit of reluctance here.
Oh, you bet Freya wasn't thrilled about it.
Yeah.
But Thor's hammer was missing, and the security of Asgard was at stake. Desperate times called for desperate measures.
Right.
So Loki donned the cloak, transformed himself into a falcon, and took to the skies.
So where did Loki fly off to? Where would someone even hide a god's hammer?
He flew to Jotunheim, the land of the giants, because who else would have the audacity to steal from the gods, right?
Makes sense. So Loki arrives in Jotunheim searching for the hammer. Does he find it?
He does. He tracks the hammer down to a rather arrogant giant named Thrym.
Thrym? Okay.
And here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Thrym admits to stealing Mjolnir. He even agrees to return it.
Okay.
But there's a catch. A rather large, incredibly bold catch.
Okay. I'm already intrigued. What does Thrym want in exchange for the hammer? Surely he doesn't want gold or jewels.
You want something a little more unconventional. Thrym wants Freya as his wife.
Oh, hold on, Mary Frey. This giant has some serious nerve.
Yeah.
The goddess of love and beauty married to a giant. I bet the gods weren't too keen on this idea.
Oh, they were furious.
Yeah.
Freya, of course, flat out refused.
Right.
But the problem remained. They needed that hammer back.
Yeah.
So the gods held a council brainstorming ways to outsmart Thrym and get Mjolnir back without sacrificing Freya to a giant's unwanted affections.
This sounds like the perfect opportunity for some Loki-level trickery. What did they come up with?
It was Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, known for his sharp eyes and even sharper wit, who came up with a brilliant, if slightly ridiculous plan.
Okay.
They would dress Thor up as Freya.
What?
And send him to Jotunheim as the bride.
Thor as a bride. Now that's an image I never thought I'd have to conjure up. Talk about a sight for sore eyes.
It's a pretty hilarious image.
Yeah.
The goddesses help Thor get ready, dressing him in Freya's finest clothes, complete with the necklace of the Brisings, which apparently looked amazing on him.
Oh, okay.
They even gave him a veil to hide his beard.
I bet Loki was having a field day with this.
Oh, he was in his element. Loki, of course, was thrilled to go along with the scheme. He went as Thor's bridesmaid, and they set off for Jotunheim for this very unusual wedding.
Okay, this has got to be one of the most awkward wedding ceremonies in history. What happens when they get to Thrym's hall?
Well, Thrym, completely oblivious, welcomes Freya and her maid with a feast. Now, Thor, being Thor, isn't exactly known for his subtlety or restraint.
Of course not.
So he proceeds to eat and drink like, well, a god. He devours whole oxen drinks, barrels of mead, leaving everyone else at the table stunned.
Okay, I'm picturing a very confused and possibly terrified giant at this point.
Yeah.
But how do they actually get the hammer back? This can't have been all about the food, right?
Right. Thrym, completely fooled by the disguise, calls for the hammer to be brought in to sanctify the bride. He wants it placed in Freya's lap as a symbol of their union, a very unusual wedding tradition.
Oh, man, this is a moment of truth. What does Thor do?
The moment those giants place Mjolnir in his lap, Thor drops all pretense. He grabs his hammer, tears off his veil, and lets out a thunderous roar that probably shook the entire realm of Jotunheim.
I bet the party ended pretty quickly after that. Did Thrym even have time to process what was happening?
Not really. Thor, having reclaimed his hammer, proceeded to lay waste to Thrym and his entire hall.
Yeah.
He smashed giants left and right.
Yeah.
With Mjolnir, Loki, of course, joined in the chaos, no doubt, reveling in the mayhem. It was a total massacre.
So in the end, Thor gets his hammer back.
Yes.
Teaches Thrym a lesson about messing with the gods. And everyone heads back to Asgard for, I'm guessing, a much more celebratory feast?
Exactly. The story is classic Norse mythology. A blend of humor, action, and a touch of the absurd.
Yeah.
It shows us Thor's strength, but also his sometimes naive nature.
Right.
It highlights Loki's cunning and love of chaos, and it all revolves around this powerful object, Mjolnir, which is more than just a weapon. It's a symbol of order and divine power.
And it also touches on the complex relationship between the Aesir gods and the giants, right?
Yes.
It's this constant back and forth, this struggle for power that ultimately leads to Ragnarok.
You're right. These tensions between the gods and the giants simmer beneath the surface of many Norse myths, reminding us that even in a world of gods and monsters, conflict is inevitable.
Right.
But before we dive into the epic showdown of Ragnarok, there's another story we need to explore, one that highlights a very different kind of power.
Right.
One that doesn't involve brute strength or trickery, but the enduring power of words and storytelling.
Now that's a power I can get behind.
Yes.
What story are we talking about?
We're going to talk about the binding of Fenrir.
Okay.
A tale that involves a monstrous wolf.
Okay.
A chain made of impossible things.
Right.
And a god who makes a terrible sacrifice for the sake of the world.
Okay, so we're talking about Fenrir. Now, whenever wolves come up in mythology, it's usually not a good sign. What's the story with this particular wolf?
Well, Fenrir isn't just any wolf. He's the son of Loki and a giantess named Angrboda. And let's just say he takes after his father when it comes to causing trouble. The thing is, Fenrir is no ordinary wolf. He's a monstrous wolf destined to grow so large that his jaws could stretch from the earth to the heavens.
Okay, that sounds like a problem. Even for gods who are used to dealing with giants and monsters, what did they do with a wolf that massive and dangerous?
The gods knew that Fenrir posed a serious threat, especially with Ragnarok looming on the horizon. Prophecies foretold that Fenrir would play a key role in the final battle, and not on the side of the gods. So they decided they needed to contain him, to bind him somehow.
Easier said than done, right? What kind of chain could possibly hold a monstrous wolf destined to devour the world?
That was the challenge. No ordinary chains could hold Fenrir. So the gods turned to the dwarves, master craftsmen, known for their skill in forging magical objects. They commissioned them to create a chain that was unlike anything ever seen before.
I am picturing some serious dwarven blacksmithing action here. What did they use to make this chain?
Well, this is where the story gets really interesting. The dwarfs crafted the chain from 6 impossible things.
Okay.
The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird, and the sinews of a bear.
Wait, those are impossible. How do you even find those things, let alone forge them into a chain?
Exactly, and that was the point.
Huh.
The chain known as Gleipnir looked and felt like a silken ribbon, but it held within it the essence of things that couldn't exist. This made it incredibly strong, but also deceptive.
So the gods have this magical chain. How do they convince Fenrir, this giant wolf, to let them put it on him? I mean, he's not exactly known for his trust in the gods.
You're right. Fenrir was cunning, and he suspected the gods were up to something. They convinced him to participate in a test of strength, claiming it was just a game. Twice, Fenrir easily broke the chains they tried to bind him with, but then they brought out Gleipnir.
Okay, so Fenrir sees the silken ribbon. He's probably thinking this is going to be easy. What happened?
Fenrir was hesitant, sensing something was amiss. He agreed to be bound by Gleipnir, but only if one of the gods would place their hand in his mouth as a sign of good faith. It was a dangerous proposition, but one of the gods stepped forward.
Which god was brave enough or foolish enough to do that? I mean, talk about putting your hand in the lion's or wolf's mouth.
It was Tyr, the god of war and courage, who volunteered. He knew the risks, but he also understood the danger Fenrir posed. So he placed his hand in the wolf's jaws, and the gods bound Fenrir with Gleipnir.
And it worked. The impossible chain held.
As the chain tightened, Fenrir realized he'd been tricked. He struggled with all his might, but the more he fought, the tighter the bonds became. And in that moment, Tyr's hand was snapped off by the wolf's powerful jaws. It was a terrible sacrifice, but it bound Fenrir, preventing him from wreaking havoc until Ragnarok.
Wow, that's a powerful story. It's about facing a seemingly impossible threat, about using cunning and even sacrifice to protect the world. It's also a reminder that even gods can be vulnerable, that even they have to make difficult choices.
Exactly. And Tyr's sacrifice wasn't in vain. By binding Fenrir, the gods delayed the inevitable, giving themselves and humanity more time. But it also highlights the inevitability of Ragnarok, this constant tension between order and chaos, between the forces that hold the world together and those that seek to tear it apart.
It's like all these myths, all these stories are pointing toward that final confrontation.
They are.
But even with Ragnarok looming, there's still so much to explore. We've got Thor disguised as a bride, Odin's quest for the mead of poetry, a monstrous wolf bound by an impossible chain. It's wild, tragic, and funny all at the same time.
And that's the beauty of Norse mythology. It doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of existence, but it also finds moments of humor, of cunning, of resilience. It reminds us that even in a world facing inevitable destruction, there's still beauty to be found, stories to be told, and wisdom to be gained.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the depth and complexity of these myths. And I have to say, Neil Gaiman does an incredible job of bringing these ancient stories to life.
He does. He captures the spirit of the myths while making them relatable for modern audiences. And I think that's what makes Norse mythology so enduring. These stories, with all their strangeness and brutality, offer us a glimpse into the human condition, into our relationship with the natural world, with fate, and with the power of storytelling itself.
So for anyone listening who wants to explore these myths further, I highly recommend checking out Gaiman's book. It's a fantastic starting point for a journey into the world of Norse mythology.
It is. And as you delve deeper into these stories, ask yourself, what do these myths reveal about our own hopes and fears? How do they shape our understanding of the world and our place within it?
That's a great question to ponder. And remember, even though Ragnarok is coming, there's still time to appreciate the stories, the wisdom, and the enduring power of these myths. Till next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.